Hello! Always appreciative that you are joining me once again here at That Buzzing Sound. I am Justin. Our spotlight interview with Canadian singer-songwriter Kaleb of the Harmonic is mere moments away. But first, I wanted to shout out a giant thank you to everyone who listened to our interview with Lexitron last time. Your supportive interaction allowed us to reach our charity goal for feedingamerica.org, thus providing 500 meals to those who needed it during these challenging times. Much love to Lexi, her fans, and our listeners for paying it forward. This charity challenge continues as we are spreading the love to a nonprofit that means the world to the Harmonic, which is the Unison Benevolent Fund, whose mission provides counseling and emergency relief services to the Canadian music community, helping professional music makers in times of hardship, illness, and economic difficulties. Kaleb talks about the personal impact the organization has made to his life in our lengthy interview. That covers his over a decade-long journey in independent music and everything that led to the rising of the Harmonic's new beginning in the form of their addicting folk rock EP, It's All Okay Thanks to You, which dropped last Friday to positive vibes and masterful reviews. It's one of those music projects that we need at a moment like this, as it fills me with great joy with each spin. Please seek it out for streaming and purchase on Bandcamp, or wherever you collect your music. All the links are listed below, alongside the many references that came up in our enlightening chat. For we not only spoke about some of the fun behind-the-scenes details of production, or how it felt teaming up with friends Dave and Ian to make the Harmonic a trio, but the tremendous steps Kaleb took to rebuild himself and the Harmonic after being hit by adversity after adversity during his winter years. Then, just as the sun seemed to be shining its brightest for a re-emerging artist who has been working damn hard for decades to reach their greatest dreams, the world changed and we got stuck in limbo. Find out what Kaleb had to say about being a musician in these isolated days and more in our conversation with the lead of the Harmonic. Hello, Kaleb. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
How's it like right now are you in Toronto at the moment, or?
I am. I'm hiding in the basement to try and keep the audio quality at its highest, but also I'm away from the sunlight, which at this point is kind of like gold. Just being able to see the outdoors, even if you're not really allowed to spend time in it. But it's it's good. It's the sunny days are starting to come around, so that's a big lift to everyone's spirits, I think.
Yeah, it stopped raining here in LA, and it's like everyone's walking around the block and just enjoying it because we not only have we been inside because of the quarantine, but we've been inside because of the rain. So it's nice to see. It's nice to get a little tan because we are known for that.
Yeah.
So is your treehouse studio, is that on the top floor or is that also in the basement?
Yeah, so it's in the basement. I'm in kind of the one half of the studio right now in the control room per se. It's also serves as a laundry room.
Okay.
And then down the hall is the room that's packed full of instruments and is wired up through all of the channels that I have to record. And when I moved into this place over 10 years ago now, I built the studio right away, and it's been my workspace ever since. I called it the Townhouse Recording Facility and Sound Studio, just to give a name to both rooms, since it was just kind of humorous that it was becoming a recording studio the way it was. Like, there's no separation. It's literally two rooms with a hallway between them. But I've found ways to make it work, heavy blankets, and just making it work. It's how a lot of home studios have to operate, I guess.
And you feel very safe there, right, when you're recording your music?
Yeah, absolutely. We're not doing full bands live off the floor like I used to, kind of stupidly. When I was 19, 20 years old, we would make way too much noise and the neighbors would be knocking at the door. Cops came a couple times. So I've grown up and tried to have a little more awareness of the space and when to use it, when to make noise, when not to make noise. And yeah, it's been a great and beautiful place for me to be able to work. And even the latest record is almost fully recorded there. There was just some live off the floors that we did at another studio, but I bring it back here and I'd say 80 to 85% of the work back at my place here.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it looks like a great setup based off of the live stream, because you performed, was that your Townhouse sessions about 2 weeks ago, right? And you have another one planned for probably this Friday, is what you said?
Yeah, so there's one of the drain pipes that's right beside my computer, my studio. Yeah, I mean it's a small space, but it actually sounds pretty good if you get the levels right. I just had a mic and a guitar amp going into the room, and the sound for that live stream was actually just off my phone. But I was pretty happy with how it turned out. So that is the one room, and then like I said, down the hall is this other room with all of the recording equipment and the monitors and the speakers. Definitely a special place for me, a fairly magical place for music to come alive.
So tell us a little bit of your approach to this EP. It's all okay thanks to you. It's been over a decade of you going solo,
Mm-hmm.
and now you've gone from being folksy at the piano to being folksy behind the guitar again. So
Yeah.
tell us kind of what your approach is after your magnum opus, your two-parter.
Yeah. So winter really took up the bulk of my 20s. It took 8 years, which really was more like 8 seasons. I really only did work on it in the winter seasons, as per the rule that I gave myself when I was young and spry. At 20 years old, I thought of the idea, and then every single winter I worked on it. And so once that was all done, I found myself, I released it when I was 27. Had been working on it for so long, and I found myself in a position where all I wanted to do was change gears and start working with a band in which I already had a drummer for a couple of years straight. He's one of my best buds named Dave
Mm-hmm.
Skirtich, and I'd been playing with him for a while. We were going out and doing like White Stripe style gigs, just the two of us. And I told him that it was about time for us to get a bassist, which is what was always missing, and to start rehearsing. What songs are we gonna start with? Let's pick 8 to 10 songs to start with, and it was pretty obvious which ones. And then there was a couple great surprises that we threw in, but yeah. So it was around then. It was our first gig was I think we were playing for about a year, so 2017 to 2018, we were rehearsing, and then once Ian McLennan, who's a lifelong friend of mine, he's from my hometown of St. Thomas. Once he really was on board very quickly with getting out there and playing gigs. In 2018, we went out and played our first gig at the Cavern Bar, and then we eventually were playing shows at Lee's Palace and the Horseshoe and the Burdock. So we had some really good gigs under our belts, and the material for us to record was really coming together. And I told my drummer a number of times that I had this idea for us to record a small EP. I think it was more his idea for us to record an EP than an album. I'm so old school that I'll just go and make a full length album, or apparently a double album, without thinking about the medium or the fact that it's 2020 and maybe people don't listen to albums, whatever it is. I've never really cared too much about that conversation of people saying, don't worry about albums, just release singles. I've started to try and obey the idea of the singles and releasing singles, but I'm still very tied to the idea of an album, whether it's a concept album like some of the ones I've been making, or just larger collections. So it definitely was largely in part to Dave giving me the push to for us to do an EP. And maybe follow it up with another one, which is still an idea. But for us to do an EP, 4 or 5 songs, and when I started to think about them, the songs that we would include, I fell pretty quickly into a list that just made sense. Songs that I felt were ready to go, that I could have released yesterday, and that I just wanted to put out there. So 4 of those tunes I considered kind of to be throwaway songs, but I knew, let's do our best and see what we can do with them. And I liked the band arrangements, and I was really, really happy with how they turned out. And then the big decision was, okay, what's the song that we're going to put on this that is, a bit of the breadwinner type tune? Like, what's the single? And Sign on the Road is one of those songs that I've carried with me for, hell, I don't even know. It's been like 5 or 6 years since I wrote that song.
Yeah, because you wrote it with another band, is what you said?
So I wrote the song for the band, The Other Birds. I wrote it on piano with Jeff and Evelyn playing with me in this trio, and I was playing Wurlitzer keyboard and bass in that band. And we had a pretty killer arrangement and version of it. It was slower, and it was piano based, so it was much, much different. It wasn't as much of a sing-along. It just kind of what it was in the first couple of years, and we recorded a demo of it. And, by the time that the band disbanded, I just kept playing the song while I was gigging. It was one of those songs that I always knew was one of my best. People always liked it, commented on it, sang along. So just by default, I kind of started playing it on acoustic guitar because that's how most of my gigs are performed, because it's hard to find a piano out there or to drag your very heavy piano around. So I started playing it on acoustic guitar, started playing it a little faster, a little more of a folk rock song. And by the time that the band started getting the arrangement together, it was really obvious that there was like a new life to it. It really was a new undertaking. It wasn't just us covering that song. It was like coming up with the new version of it. Sign on the Road 2.0, I guess.
The problem that I've had with this EP is I haven't been able to get on the road and drive to it because it's one of those EPs that just will sound so good with the windows down, just like on a weekend on the freeway.
Yeah, it's a good.
It's so disappointing.
It's a good one for a sunny day. It's a good one for having a drink or having a hangout with your friends. It's the complete opposite of winter. It's not a sit down and listen by yourself kind of album. It's meant to be played in the background. It's meant to make you happy, make you dance, make you sing, and that really was the idea of the EP all along, was to put out new recordings, a new style of recordings from what I had released over the last so many years. That part of it I'm really proud of.
It's really addicting. It's infectious. It makes me feel good. Are a lot of these songs based off of real experiences? Like where did the inspiration come for a lot of from a songwriting perspective?
Yeah. Coffee Girl really was a walk around the block to a coffee shop, a bakery around the corner from me on Gerrard Street East in Toronto. A lot of my songs I write in my head. I just start singing a tune, the lyrics or the melody comes to mind, and I just start kind of singing it before I even have an instrument. And that song particularly was one of them. And It's All Okay. To be honest, I almost don't even remember really writing it. I know who I wrote it about, which is a great friend of mine, one of the best songwriters that I know.
It also seems like a thank you to the fans, because again, it's been 10 years. You've been doing this since the age of 14. Like, this music has really been your life. And I just get the feeling that you're also kind of thanking the fans and everyone who's stuck around.
Yeah, I absolutely. I knew that using the name of that song as the name of the EP was an obvious choice to me once I thought about it, because of the positivity. I knew that there was multiple meanings, and I've definitely thought about that. It's all okay thanks to you, thanks to you all, thanks to like you being the person who's reading it on the album cover or who's listening to it on their iPod or whatever it is. That it's so personal, that it isn't like a lot of my songs I write about myself. I write about my partner. I write about friends, but the name of the EP really is like it can mean anybody. It's not to any specific person. It can mean anyone. It can mean anyone who shares the music with their friends. And I mean, now in the context of like the 2 months that I spent working on this album, like everyone else, I would have never expected that all of a sudden a pandemic of like historic proportion would fall onto the release of the album. And so now even the meaning, the kind of the backwards way that you can see the name of the album turn around and almost be like such a necessary message and this well of positivity that you can just kind of keep reminding yourself it's all okay. Definitely, it's all okay thanks to you. Considering people tuning into a live stream or listening to the EP, like that's all of that is making it okay. It's making the experience of going ahead with releasing this album okay.
Yeah, it's okay to have fun, even though we're in this weird state.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more than okay. It's like it's almost necessary. You've definitely got to take it as an experience, and not necessarily such a negative one. It's definitely a time for everyone to reflect and slow down a bit. And so I'm happy to continue with the original plan of releasing the album when we were, which ironically I was rushing for the whole time to release this album just before Record Store Day. And in the end, Record Store Day gets postponed, maybe even canceled, who knows. And so the timeline is just ironic, really. It's funny.
Yeah, and Record Store Day is like one of my favorite days of the year. Oh, 2 days of the year, because there's a Black Friday one too. But yeah, it's I can't wait to talk to you about vinyl just in general, because I've seen your collection on Instagram. It is quite amazing.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah. I mean, yeah. When my girlfriend moved in to the place last year, we did quite the renovation. We gutted the living room and then put it back together again. And the library with her books and my vinyl was a great idea that we had that turned into, just the coolest little nook. And all of those wooden crates were a great way to put all the records together, somewhat organized into genres, or there's a whole crate of live albums. And yeah, it's been really nice. And then I built the shelves, the 2 wooden shelves that are on the wall to display some records, and I try and rotate those. Yeah, it's just such a focus. Like we wanted the TV in the room to be the least of the point of focus. And
Oh, so do you do alphabetical, or do you do it by live albums and studio records?
yeah, so I've got
What's your system?
so I got a crate of new arrival, basically, like all the records that I've brought back home that I want to listen to a couple times before they get sorted. I've got a crate of live albums, an entire crate of classical vinyl, a crate of soul, country, blues.
What's the first thing, or the first couple things?
Yeah, and then the 3 crates on the very top are pop rock, and they are the only ones that are alphabetical. It's just your Beatles to Beach Boys to Raconteurs, Daniel Romano to the Ridgie Havens. It's hard when I'm not flipping through it, but so yeah, pop rock in general, and then another crate of strictly punk or pop punk or metal records, some singer-songwriter stuff that's put aside as well. But yeah, I mean, my favorite crate is the classical. That's definitely been a focus of mine, is to try and build up my classical.
Because you use those influences on Winter, correct?
Yeah, you've done your research, man. I'm impressed. Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, the direction of Winter from the beginning changed for the better, because I started to allow myself to get back into and enjoy classical music again. I grew up playing it from 5 to 15 years old. I was playing classical piano, and then my rebellion when I was 14, 15 years old was picking up a guitar, because a guy who played drums in my public school told me on the playground that playing guitar was cool, and I wasn't cool. I was bullied, and I sang in a choir, and I wanted to be cool. So I picked up the guitar and just started learning Green Day songs and power chords, and started playing in bands. And we were swept then, as young kids usually are. We were swept by our favorite music and the music scene of our age and of our time, which was loud, screamo punk rock music. And so that's what I started to do and to play for so many years, and almost like to more fans with those bands, with my band Far From Freedom and the Capitol, more fans, and but like packed gigs and like all these funny things that now when I look back, like when I'm playing folk shows sometimes to 1 or 2 or 5 people in a room, like it was an incredible way for me to start my career as a songwriter. So I spent a lot of years away from classical music, and then by the time I was 19 or 20, and you kind of all of a sudden, you realize, oh, okay, I am getting old. I'm getting older, and I'm, like I can be myself. You start to find confidence in who you really are, what you really love, and I started to get back into classical music with a vengeance, collecting classical records and watching documentaries and biopics on classical composers. I was just obsessed. Yeah, it really did drive the direction of Winter towards that kind of classical sound, classical arrangements, all of the strings and the piano parts. That there's a couple piano nods to Chopin and to Beethoven, and there's a lot of stuff that's in there for nerds, for music nerds like me.
Oh yeah, you can really hear it within bits and pieces of the records. And I became obsessed with classical music back mid high school.
Mm-hmm.
Throw it at me, throw it at the wall. So I feel you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's when I was during the making of the Winter album, when I was going through some pretty difficult times with a bit of a strain and disease that I had physically in my wrists, that basically panned my whole life at the moment. The number one thing that I would attest to getting me through it is a single piece of music by Beethoven. It's the second movement of his Piano Concerto Number 5, The Emperor. And I honestly, I don't know like where my psychological, physical, mental health would be without having had that piece of music to listen to almost on a daily basis. Yeah, it just breathes. There's like moments in it where it breathes and it slows down and it makes you take a deep breath, and it is just like pure zen for me, and then by the time that I got to hear it performed live, it kind of just like everything, comes around in full circle, and I just realized like how important that 7 minutes of a moment in time really is. So
Was there a difficult challenge on this EP, or did everything come together quite easily compared to like Winter, which took multiple seasons?
yeah, I mean, as far as projects go, like Winter took 8 years, and the next thing that I did to officially move on from Winter and put it behind me was to work on just 2 songs instead. So A Heart So Heavy and In the Forest, which I recorded on the same grand piano at the Rose Room in Toronto as I had for Winter. And so I recorded those in 2018, I believe, in March. And then brought them back to my studio. And even those 2 songs, because of some crazy life events with some pretty maniacal roommates, I spent almost a year just trying to find the time and the space to finish those 2 songs. And by the time that I did, about a year later, March of 2019, it was my 10th anniversary as the Sun Harmonic, and I knew that if I didn't celebrate that, then being independent, no one else is making those decisions for you or celebrating things on your behalf. So I decided, okay, I'm going to release these songs. I'm going to put them on the A and B side of a 7-inch record, which I've never done, release them as singles, which I've never really done, and go back out on tour again for the first time in a while. And so that's what I did with my 10th year. And so yeah, by the time that the year was coming to a close, definitely was like fall of last year, where we decided, okay, let's make an EP. I want to call it It's All Okay Thanks to You, for sure. I had all these ideas, and I was like, okay, we're going to get the band to record, their first recordings. Let's do it off the floor. Let's do it at the Chalet, where I had recorded twice already, and even hire the same engineer named Josh Bowman, who had recorded part of my Winter album for me. And so let's kind of go back to these old familiar places and see what we can do with one day. And so we recorded that December 7th, and about a month later, I think it was January 3rd actually, the band got together again for the first time to start working on edits and some group vocals and stuff like that. And then over that month of January, I had actually cut my hours down and went from working much more to working only part-time, so that I could focus on finishing the EP and getting the work done. And I just barely did. I just barely finished it in time for it to reach this deadline.
A record store day.
What turned into a complete shit show of a deadline, now that everything doesn't even exist. But so that's kind of that was the idea from the beginning, was let's get in, record live off the floor in one day, and just finish the record in a month. Just
power through it.
And it worked. I don't think these recordings would be what they are without that timeline, without me having to, there was a day where I woke up every day, any studio day that I had, I woke up by 7:38 in the morning, got a coffee, and went into the studio. And there was a day specifically where I set up the piano, the keyboard, and that day, to keep on schedule, that day I had to record all of the piano parts for all 5 songs. Wow. And I hadn't written them yet. I just bring up the session, start playing, find the sound I want, find the part I want. By the end of the day, I had all 5 tunes done. Maybe I had to come back and double something or fix an idea, but for the most part, it was kind of one day at a time. And 1 or 2 days of recording acoustic guitar, 1 day recording electric guitar, and then by the time that all that was over, it was time to mix and then time to master. And it's like, all those things are such huge steps, and if you take them quickly, it's astonishing how it goes from sounding fairly disjointed to being a finished recording in like a matter of 1 to 2 weeks. It was amazing.
So you were really happy with this sped up process compared to like just sitting on things, testing it out, experimenting. You really like the ferocity of let's get this done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least for these songs. There's other tunes that I know when I get around to recording them, I'll probably want to spend 8 years doing them, but I don't think I'll ever do a project of that size again. I'm not sure that I would. Yeah, for these songs, it felt right. I mean, the next project I'm working on almost as of next week, now that I'm getting most of this work done for the EP, once it's done and released and behind me, then I'm going to be jumping back into another project that has been for one, it's a concept album, and two, it's been one that I've been dragging through my life since 2015. So it'll be about 6 years in the making. It's
called Coast to Coast, right?
Yes, for sure. So that's my next thing, is to finish it. Even though it's been 5 or 6 years, I'm going to do most of the work on that album in, say, 1 or 2, maybe 3 months. And that's a full-length album, so it'll be more work than the EP was. I'm going to be getting
Is a lot of it based off the travels that you took? Because you came out to the West Coast. It seems like you've been exploring and doing a lot of travel. Is that what the
Yeah,
inspiration is a little bit about?
for sure. If not inspiration, it's context. A lot of the songs, like two of the songs actually on the album were written on the road while traveling. A song called Ocean, which I wrote out on Vancouver Island about my friend's daughter.
Oh, very nice.
When I wrote the song, she was 1 year old, and I put her to bed, and I finished the lyrics after I put her to bed and tucked her in because I was staying at my friend Elian's place. It was a beautiful visit on the island, and so her daughter Lila was very young at that point, but now she is 6 years old.
Incredible.
And so I'll be releasing that song when she's old enough to even understand that it was written about her when she was so young. But I played the demo for her of the song after I had recorded it on Vancouver Island. I played the demo of the song, or the foundation of the song that I had recorded for Ellie and her mom in the car, and Lila was sitting in the back seat, and she started saying her name out loud. She heard and could tell that her name was in the song, and she was singing along. It was a very, very beautiful, surreal moment, and now 6 years later I'll be finishing it and recording it. But yeah, so I mean, that song specifically was directly influenced by the travel. Another song called Flying Over Saskatchewan, which is very literal. I wrote the lyrics on the plane. I wrote the melody and the idea of the song sitting on the plane flying over Saskatchewan. And so those two songs were written on the road. The rest of them were written beforehand, but the idea was to record them after having traveled all that way out to Halifax and out to Montreal and out to Ottawa on the train. Half the album was recorded in like 3 days or 4 days of travel out to the East Coast. And I had been to the East Coast before, but I hadn't been in many years. I had never gone on a train on Via Rail, and I was singing my way out there. If you sing on Via Rail for the passengers, you ride for free. So that's how I was getting out there. Yeah, the idea was to get all the way to Halifax. And when you're traveling, especially when you're traveling like that, like it's different flying somewhere compared to driving or sitting on the train
most
for
definitely.
like a day and a half there. And so the experience is everything. And by the time that you get to this studio that was so far away from you for so long, and all it was a Google search and Google images and everything of the studio, but by the time you get there and you walk in and you go, holy crap, I made it, I'm here. Like, now I have to perform. Now I have to record, and I have to do it well because I'm not coming back and I'm already spending the money. So it's a lot of pressure. And it worked. Like, especially the session that I had in Halifax, it was a bit, there was a bit of magic to it. It was amazing. And that was after a number of things went wrong. Like, my studio plans in Montreal fell through, and I had to book a studio session on a dime. And I got into a studio to record vocals that I wasn't able to record in Ottawa because there was technical difficulties and all these things that had fallen apart. And then by the end of the trip, I got everything done that I wanted to, not in the way that I thought I would, but yeah, it's like the whole thing was a challenge. But I'm glad I did. I'm glad I took it on because it's going to pay off. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to just get back into that mode, the creative mode, the studio mode, because I haven't been there for almost a month and a half now. I've been doing all the other work involved with releasing an album that if I wasn't independent, I wouldn't have to do. But
yeah, you could just ship it off.
Yeah,
Just
so
go here, guys. On to the next project.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot to it, and so I'm excited to get into the swing of one album cycle after the other. It really does cycle. There's all the motions of it, but I'm so familiar with it by now. I've just been I'm only making my best records as of the last 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 if you include Winter, which I think is pretty good. But I've been making records independently now since the first album that I recorded myself was when I was 17. So now it's like 13 years of independently recording and releasing my own music. And now I'm more comfortable with the approach than I was before. And I know what to expect. And I know that there's going to be a lot of negative and really impactful things that are going to happen along the way. And then there's going to be a couple surprising and positive things that come out of the woodwork that make everything else worth it. And drives you to keep fighting for those little moments, even if it's 3% of the 100% of what you're doing is paying off. Then it's, for someone who's crazy enough like me to just keep doing it and trying it over and over again, it's interesting. It really pays off. Like, for example, the Sirius XM radio play that I've been getting with Sign on the Road it's something that I could have only wished would happen. I fought for it, and it finally happened, and that's after not having won that fight for a couple of years. So it's it is what it is. It's a lifelong journey. There's a lot to say about it, but
and you gotta bless the broken road sometimes. It's all part of the plan. Just gotta throw your hands up and go.
For sure, yeah.
It is what it is. Let's go. But I'm so glad that, because like normally like a journey like that might crush like an artist, but it just seems like you just continue just to keep fighting, and it may be another 27 albums, but you just seem inspired. Even talking about the train story for Coast to Coast. You just sound so inspired. It's like I see this journey, and I want to translate that through song. That's just something that is just so magical.
Yeah.
But
thank you.
But is it strange releasing music in this current environment without the possibility of touring, and like it's like you have to rely on a lot of technology now to even just promote a record?
Yeah. I mean, obviously our distance from Toronto to LA is like would have caused us to do this, online or over the phone. Anyways, this is the first time I've ever used Discord, and there's all these new things, like using Zoom for the first time, and using like everyone's kind of just being thrown into this new way of connecting and communicating. I had never thought of doing a live stream concert, let alone even doing a live video on Facebook ever. So like the day before I did the full 1 hour concert, I tried to do a live video on my phone of me just sitting and playing the song Get Lost in the living room. And I'm glad I did, because I did like an entire 5 or 6 minute spiel and played a song with the live stream being sideways, because I didn't even know that I didn't even know about the orientation of your phone and having a horizontal picture like it. So it's, you're just being forced, like you as a musician, I'm saying, is like we're all being forced to try and participate with, with this new experience.
But do you feel like it's bringing you closer to the fans a little bit?
It's definitely, like I can't say that it's better than being in a room with people who are right up against the stage and they're there. You can see they're there. Like when you're playing a live stream, you don't know who's watching. You don't know how they're watching it. I know some people are sitting in front of their computer, or they have me on their TV and they got a glass of wine and they're singing along. Some people are probably just checking in on their phone, whatever it is, but it's just so unknown. You're playing literally to a phone, and you don't know how many tens or hundreds of people are on the other side of that phone. So it's
because you can't feel the energy.
I mean,
like you sometimes
you are the energy. There is no energy. You finish a song and there's no applause and there's no interaction. There's no people aren't, shouting out songs. They're not heckling you. They're not whatever. Like I'm used to that shit and I love it. It's the best part of a show. So when it's not there, it's a little strange. So I can't say that it's any better than that experience, but it's very interesting to think that, like as of the last live stream, when I look back at people who were commenting, and you can play one show from my studio that's broadcast out onto Facebook, and some of my best friends from Ottawa are watching. My family from home in St. Thomas in London are watching. There's a guy out in Vancouver who was watching. So that part of it is very cool, that I don't have to pay for the van and the travel and the, everything that comes along with touring. You just press live and put on a show, and people can tune in and enjoy it, and they can still go back and enjoy it in hindsight. So that part of it is cool. That I really like and I appreciate. And this live stream coming up on Friday, I'm interested to see what I can do with it. I'm gonna play the EP front to back. I think I'm gonna do it entirely unplugged, just the acoustic guitar and my voice into the room. I'm not gonna do the miking and everything that I did as of the last show. I just want to do it differently. That's the other thing too, is, putting on a show, putting on a concert, especially the more that you've done it, in which, like, by now, the amount of hilarious stories of, like, the worst gigs that I've ever played, like, I'll never forget them, and they're with me every time I get up on stage. But then there's some of the best shows I've ever played are the reason that I want to keep doing it. And so by the time that you get a bit older and you have more experience behind you, you do start to realize, your place as a musician. You're entertaining, you're in show business, everything is at your fingertips. The look of the stage, the lighting, the sound, everything, it can be controlled. It's really empowering to realize that you have that, and that you can set the stage up in a certain way that it looks really great, rather than not realizing you can do that and it actually looks pretty bad. When you start to realize that everything is in your hands like that, that's when you put on a good show. And then obviously you need to have the songs and the chops to play instruments and to sing well, but that's when you put on a good show, is when it's all around an experience. And so with the live stream, it's so weird because for one, the perspective never changes. It doesn't move. It's a static shot. And so I spent, like, the concert was an hour long, but I probably spent 3 hours getting the shot right, making it so that when I played the piano, you could see my hands. Like, I had to move the piano a million times to get it into perspective, and to have, when I sang with guitar at the mic, it took so long to find where the mic has to be and what angle it has to be, that, like, you can watch it and it is okay. And then the sound and the amps and everything in the room, I just tailored it so that it was going to be really great. In the end, it turned out well, and I'm really happy with how that one turned out. But so now the live stream on Friday, I'm thinking of doing it entirely different, just so it is a different show. It's like as if you're going to a different venue. So it's, I've got a couple ideas already, but that's kind of where my head's at with this whole live stream thing, is, still make it special every time. Like, it's in your hands, it's in your power to make it an experience, to make it something
Something enjoyable for them
Sure,
to
exactly.
for everyone to
Yeah,
watch.
yeah, exactly. And especially with the fact that we don't have anything else but that. Where I can't even be with the band. I can't even
Yeah.
be with the bandmates to celebrate it. And we were supposed to have what I think would have been probably the best show of my whole life. Was supposed to happen on Saturday. We were supposed to play the official Record Store Day after party, which was, again, when was when Record Store Day was that day. So obviously it was canceled and postponed, like everything else. And it was just an incredible opportunity that I was so proud to have been given. And it was going to be just an incredibly celebratory night for us to release the EP, and then the day after we played this amazing show. So now, I mean, on the other hand, now it's, by doing this live stream and playing the EP front to back, and then a couple other rock and roll tunes and having fun, like that is as good as it's gonna get right now. And you've just got to be okay with it. Like, there's no other option. There's so many things. There's so much worse going on in the world out there, of course, with people's health being affected, is so much more devastating than, a guy like me losing a show, even if it took me 16 to almost 17 years, whatever, for me to work towards getting something like that I was really proud and excited to have. That's still, I just keep reminding myself, it is what it is. It's not going to stop me from fighting to get back onto that stage and get out there once this is all over. I think it's going to be a true test and sign of musicians, or even an artists, just artists in general, a sign of their endurance and their persistence and determination, to see who gets out into the world again with just as much strength as they had going into this pandemic. On the other side of it, I think unfortunately, I think there will be a good handful of people who will throw the towel in. They won't be able to do it anymore, mentally, physically, financially, and that's a terrible thing to happen.
Because people are losing their livelihood.
Yeah.
It's scary right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's good and bad things about being an independent musician. But one of the good things is that, like, it's hard to, if you've got it in your heart and your soul to keep doing it and to keep trying to grow, it's hard to stop me and others like me who I see are, have that same fire in them. At 25, I got a fairly, mild, medium to severe form of repetitive strain in my wrist that I mentioned earlier. And that was 25 years old, where, like, should have been at the top of my game. And I was like completely destroyed. I couldn't even perform any more than 2 songs at a time. And that was like 2 to 3 years of being completely out of the spotlight, totally torn, and demolished, in terms of my output and my career and blah blah blah. And I found myself on the other side of that, and then and that really was starting the band and recording this new EP and all these things that are now kind of in reaction to, or kind of again in like a bit of a rebellion against how crappy of a time that was in my life.
Yeah, it sounds like
so
night
now,
and day right now.
yeah, and so now I almost see the effects of this pandemic are, probably that would be the next thing. Since getting tendonitis as a young kid, that pandemic will always be that in like every musician's life. It'll be that moment where like everything stopped, and did you come out on the other side of it, and still, did it hurt you enough to make you stop, or make you stop believing in who you are and what you're doing? And I'm just, I take pride in dreaming of getting on the other side of it, and being, being who I've always been. Anyways, despite whatever this pandemic does, even if I'm not playing it, like you don't even know. I don't even know what the next show I'm gonna play. I don't know.
That's a question a lot of people are asking themselves.
No one knows anything really, and so do you let that bother you or stop you? That's kind of the big thing. That's the big question, and so I'm just taking it as it comes. And the work that I have to do on the Coast to Coast album is, I would have had to be at home anyways. So working from home is no problem for me. It's what I need to be doing to get new music out, and so I'm hoping by the end of this year it's out, or it's done, and I'm slowly releasing it, and it'll just be what I chose to do with my time.
Was it nice having Dave and Ian with you on this little part of the journey, on the comeback? Because you've spoken before that that Dave was a little bit of moral support for you.
Yeah. I mean, he's at most times he's been a bigger fan of the Sun Harmonic than I was. He's just so passionate and devoted to music in general. He plays in a couple other bands, even. He plays drums in a wicked punk rock band named 16 Scandals that everyone should go and listen to. And he always wanted the Sun Harmonic to be more than it was. He wanted to grow the band. He wanted to tour, and he wanted to make recordings. And it took a long time for it to happen, for obvious reasons. For all the reasons that I couldn't do those things, I never stopped talking about it with him and dreaming up, how we were going to plot our revenge. And so having those guys on my side has been my greatest strength, as far as being confident again in the Sun Harmonic as a name. A lot of people, as of recently in the last couple of years or so, as I started to talk about trying to be a musician again, and I'm going to go on tour, I'm going to record new songs, like a lot of people were asking what my new name was going to be. Like people assumed that the Sun Harmonic was over. They assumed that I would put it behind me, or that I should rebrand and all this stuff, and that never made sense to me. Like, just
because you've released music under your own name, you've released music with other bands, but the Sun Harmonic seems to be the passion project.
It's been my, other than Tangents and other genres, with the sole record that I made as the Bravi Band, and then I was lead singer in a hard rock EP called King St. Crawl, and those were all tangents. Those were all side projects, but the Sun Harmonic has never been a side project, except when it was, one of many things that I had to put aside when I couldn't even be a musician, really. But it was never a side project. It was always, when I came up with the name, in 2009, it was a solo project, but I was, I was a solo musician. I recorded 3 albums in 2 years, maybe a year and a half, and released them. Then it was at that time I immediately had started working on Winter, and I thought it would maybe be a 2 to 3 year project. It turned into 8. So it's like it's never really been on the back burner. It's just had high points and very, very, very low points. But yeah, I mean, with the guys on board, it's been almost nothing but high points. The gigs that we've been playing have been really cool. We were able to fly out to Winnipeg as of February. That was the last show I played. Actually, it was probably one of the coolest shows I've been able to be a part of. Was playing at Festival de Voyageur in Winnipeg. Where we were flown out because we won this competition last year with Canada's Walk of Fame, and that was a moment where the band was able to, as the band as a whole, was able to really come together and put on a great show, and also each individually we were able to experience how cool it is to just be flown out, stay at a hotel, be put up at a hotel, get artist passes to go out play a festival. Like it's the kind of thing that I wanted to do for 10 years, and it took me 10 years to get there. And yeah, I mean, it's on the other side of all this, it's going to be still the basis of what the Sun Harmonic is. Like it's I want to keep doing solo shows and band shows side by side. I love small, intimate solo folk concerts. I have a lot of my material only suits that. And then there's our band set, which is almost 2 to 3 times bigger than the EP. We've got a lot of other material that we just haven't recorded yet. That's going to be really a main focus, is turning the Sun Harmonic into a larger act, even adding 1 or 2 or 3 more people eventually down the road. There's 2 friends of mine, Jen and Elise, who are total BFFs from my childhood, and they're incredible vocalists who have joined me in 1 or 2 shows by now as well. So stuff like that, where it's just like, it's never ending, like the possibilities of expanding the Sun Harmonic, and there's no rules like this. There's no rules for what it can be. It can be a solo show. It can be a band. It's all those things. But I just recently have changed all of the images on all the social media for the first time in 10 years. I put up pictures of the 3 of us, of the band, recording. The pictures are us dancing on the hill in the snow in front of the studio that we recorded the EP at. And I changed over all the image of what the Sun Harmonic was to a band, and it felt really good to do that. It was nice. It's something I dreamed about doing for 5 years, 7 years even, maybe. So it's
the sun seems to be shining, and keep shining, regardless of what happens over the next couple of years. But the good thing is once this time has evolved and changed, and we all have gotten better, the energy that's going to come, those shows are just going to be amazing, and I can't wait to cover them. And if you come out to LA, or if you're somewhere on the West Coast, let me know, and I will definitely come and support you guys.
Absolutely, yeah. I would love to come down and perform there. I've played with a band from LA named Yeti Tactic. So we played with them at Lee's Palace. They came up, and I just thought it was so cool that they were from LA. And then as of last summer, I went down with my girlfriend. We went on a trip to California.
Did you like it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we drove down Highway 1. We were in San Francisco for a while. Yeah, it's all of those things are on my list, or are on my to-do list of getting out. I want to go. Never been to Europe in general, let alone performed there. And I feel like my singer-songwriter, piano man shtick could really work over in Europe, but I've just never had the opportunity to do that. And so that's like, all of those things are really what I'm doing this for, is life experience, like just continuing to make new music, new recordings, but for the purpose of taking it out on the road, traveling, seeing, meeting new people, performing outside of my comfort zone. It's scary. It's a very difficult thing to do, especially when you don't know how it's going to go, and for the most part it usually doesn't go very well. It's like financial disaster or hard keeping your health, and
someone steals your van,
sanity, like all those things. All those things are so true. But I mean, it's getting down to Los Angeles to perform would be one of those things where I would walk away going, okay, cool, check that off the list.
Tell us about the Unison Benevolent Fund, which is the charity that we are promoting. What does that mean to you? Because I love the nonprofit. Mm-hmm. What made you choose that?
Yeah, well, they've helped me 3 times now, I think, over the last many years when I've been in dire need of help. All of those other times were much more of a personal crisis, and now I'm just one of so many musicians who are in need of their support, and support like they give back to musicians. Ironically, the last year of 2019 or so, one of my day jobs is working at a record shop. So I had the idea of bringing their guitar string bracelets, which I own one of them, and it's the coolest bracelet ever. Just literally guitar strings wrapped into a really great, one size fits all type bracelet. And so when you buy those bracelets, 100% of the proceeds go to the fund. And so what I was doing was bringing the bracelets into the record shop and displaying them. And we sold, maybe 30, 40 of them at least, that I'm really proud to have done almost on my own accord. By thinking of the idea and raising almost close to $1,000 for them. And this was before, as if I knew that something crazy was going to happen and they were going to need it. This was before the pandemic hit, and the second the pandemic hit, I thought immediately about Unison, thinking, how in the world are they going to deal with what will probably be 10,000 emails from people saying, I've lost all my gigs, I've lost all of my income, I need your support. And luckily, since then, there's been a number of announcements of different charities doubling or matching dollar for dollar any donations. And I think Spotify paired up with them, and there's just a huge wave of support towards them. But yeah, they're one of a kind. They are there to help any musician who needs it. I'm really hoping that the funds don't run dry for them. They must be working nonstop to try and get money out to people and support them. And so yeah, they were just the first that I thought of that in this particular time and with my particular pursuit of a music career, it's the closest to my heart right now. The fact that they exist and aren't crumbling under the pressure. They're delivering. They are helping a lot of people. So I was on your site just before this and believe that there's going to be a link. If you scroll down, there's a link right below, right? I might be taking the words out of your mouth. It's great to know that you're doing that, and I wholeheartedly, anyone who's listening, I wholeheartedly admire any donation and contribution that you can make to them. It's a great thing, and any research that you do will show you that.
Yeah, no, it gave me chills just reading over their manifest, and I am so behind, because again, we got to pay it forward now, and we got to help out these wonderful individuals who are saving lives and taking care of everybody. Mm-hmm. It just means a lot. Help for help, and I love it. But yeah, so the final thing is I'm going to give you the platform, say all the plugs. So I know you have EP coming out Friday, which I recommend everyone listen to. Mm-hmm. The EP, if it's around, look for it. Buy it on Bandcamp, support it on Bandcamp.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people ask how they can best support a musician because they know that streaming doesn't pay. And that it's a two-part answer to that, really. Streaming, for one, yes, it's true, it does not pay. It literally pays $10 for 10,000 streams, which if you are getting 10,000 streams, you're lucky. It's hard to get that amount of streams, and then when it pays off with barely enough money to buy a lunch that day, it's you can be gutted by it, or you can just realize that hopefully one day down the road it changes, the tariffs change, and maybe there's a bit more generosity from the billionaire who runs Spotify. But it's the truth is that Spotify is all about numbers, and so by streaming the music on Spotify and bringing those numbers up, bringing those, unfortunately, it's all public. The amount of streams that these songs have had and the monthly listeners that an artist has, it's all public. So if the numbers are bad, it looks bad, and it might deter some people from even listening. It might deter some people in the music business from taking you seriously, and all of that is crazy because it has nothing to do with the art. It just has to do with popularity or whatever it is. So by streaming the music, you are supporting, especially if you're an avid streamer. So it does help. But Bandcamp.com is definitely the best actual financial support. It pays you within 24 hours. They take a fairly small cut, and it pays you right away. If you buy an album off iTunes, it takes about 3 months to even see that someone bought it, let alone get the money. And that's basically it. There's
and you have a Patreon as well, right? And you release unreleased stuff all the time.
Yeah. I started the Patreon when I went part-time to become a part-time musician. I basically just thought, okay, how in the world do I fill that gap and that money that I'm losing by working 10-hour, 12-hour days in the studio where I'm not making $1? So I started the Patreon account, and yeah, I would say that maybe that's actually the way to support because it's monthly, and you can support $2 a month or $5 or $10 or $30, and there's all these different levels of things that you're going to get back, free merch. Like the second I release an album, if depending on what tier you're on, you get the CD copy, you get the vinyl copy, whatever it is. Let alone one demo. I'm releasing one. I've got a big batch of demos recorded, so I'm releasing one of them a month privately on Patreon, and there's enough to last me until 2023. So it's quite a long-term investment and relationship to build together, starting at $2 a month. So yeah, that's a great thing to visit if you're really interested in supporting a hardworking small-town musician like me. But back to Bandcamp. Bandcamp's the best way to buy an album digitally and support me directly, or to buy the CD and the vinyl. That's where it's for sale. And I do have CD and vinyl copies of the new EP. It's All Okay Thanks to You. Those are both available now. And in our times of quarantine and self-isolation, it's nice to get some physical mail. And I'll write you a little handwritten note and things. So it's that's definitely a great way to get involved and interact. Other than that, I mean, it's just everywhere, like anywhere you listen. I know some people listen on Google Play and Amazon Music and SoundCloud and Tidal, Deezer, any of those. It'll be everywhere as of Friday morning. However you choose to listen to music is fine with me, as long as you're listening.
Any other things you want to say to the listener?
Yeah,
big
the
message.
big message. I mean, honestly, I would say that the music that I've already released can say more than I could ever say in 30 seconds. Especially the winter album. If you're looking for something to do for an hour or an hour and a half, just go and press play on the winter album on Spotify or on Bandcamp, and you'll know about half of my life story. I've just spent most of my life now trying to shed tears and laughter and happiness into my recordings, and they're there. They're always there. They're just sitting there waiting for someone to find what they like about it and find new meaning in it. And especially the message that's coming out on Friday morning, that message of it's all okay thanks to you is just so poignant, especially right now. It's the way that we're going to get through this. Forget all the attacks that people are making on each other, blaming things on each other, and we cannot fight with one another right now. The world's showing us that more than anything, we need to be a unit, one whole unit. All humans are now brought down to this level of being, exposed and being victim to this pandemic. And my contribution to that really is the CP, is new music, positivity in music, especially Sign on the Road now. I would have never thought in the 5 to 7 years that I've been holding on to this song, I would have never thought of releasing it in the middle of a historic moment in history. And even though I don't have a million fans who are listening to it, when I think of the people who are listening now and the people who will listen in the future, it's just an interesting time for perspective and context. It's an interesting time to release music and to know that 5 years from now I'll listen back on that recording maybe and think about how wild it was. What a time to live through. That definitely is, from me to you, is what I can do, is what I can contribute. Like the Heart So Heavy song that we released last year, it's like my message absolutely, like through my music, is in that song, is sending my love to you. There's something to be said about the power of music, the positivity that can come of a heartfelt relationship with art and with music. So that's what I give. That's what I can do. And I'll keep trying to do it the best that I can. So.
This episode of That Buzzing Sound was recorded and edited using a variety of free applications like Audacity and Discord, and is hosted entirely on Anchor FM, on top of being supported by listeners like you.